Okay, do you go by Cass or Cassidy?
Whatever is easiest.
Really?
Cass is fine. Cassidy's fine. As long as it's not Cassandra.
You're like, do not
I'm
say.
like, not Cassandra.
Well, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, welcome. Yeah.
Say your full name. Like.
Right. Yeah, no, whatever is easiest for you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Cass, welcome to the Lifted Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited. I feel like I'm excited for our conversation. I have been excited.
Yeah.
Because it is like toxic relationships, just stuff that I feel like so many girls go through. Even us talking about it, we just related on literally like half of the stuff that had happened. And I'm like, there's too many girls going through this.
So many. Like
excited.
like more than you would think. In Canada alone, 1 in 3 teenagers between the ages of 15 and 17 are in abusive relationships. 1 in 3.
That's actually insane, especially
Like,
if you think about it.
yeah.
Like,
Whether that's emotionally, physically, or sexually, yeah. 1 in 3 teenagers.
that's terrifying.
So it's very prevalent. It happens so much.
And I feel like a lot of the time that it happens, like I think about when it happened to me, I genuinely didn't know it was like abusive or like emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
Because I literally had no idea what that meant. And I didn't know, like, first of all, I didn't know relationships, but I didn't know like my worth. I was like, especially when you're young, you just have zero idea.
Yeah, you have no
know?
experience. You have nothing to base it off of. And like with me, like I didn't have a relationship to look at that was like, oh, that's it. That's what it's supposed to look like. Between being raised by a single mom and living in a town where all the dads were working on the oil fields, there wasn't really a lot of like relationships happening. Like it was just when dads were home, they were home and they were drinking beer in the garage and then they were gone out at the field. So it was, you weren't really seeing a lot of like big happy families where I'm from.
Yeah, you're
So,
like, what am I comparing to?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. What, this or Disney Channel?
And I also genuinely think that, like, there's so many people that aren't open about relationships. Like, I even think about my mom and dad. Like, when we were growing up, they were never really that affectionate,
Yeah.
which, like, I don't know if it's just, like, their generation, they weren't that open
Yeah.
or, like, whatever. They also didn't talk a lot about, like, feelings and,
Yes.
that was just, like, their
Yeah.
generation. So, of course, we don't really have a lot they didn't talk about their relationship. They didn't talk about relationships in general.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot to like go off of.
And when they fought, it was like, I mean, my mom and my dad were separated. So like fighting for them looked a lot different than fighting for, I think, a person that had both of their parents in the house. But when my stepdad was around, like fighting with them was just like, they're going to yell at each other in the bedroom. Like they're like, we just hear little muffles of yelling, but we don't really know what's going on. We don't know how they're communicating with each other or resolving the problem, or they're just hiding it. They're hiding it and pushing it away.
So true.
Yeah.
You have no idea because
No.
you're just like, you're so out of it, which like, yay for being out of it,
Yeah.
but also at the same time, like we don't learn any life skills from being not a part of it.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So
So tell me about, because you were in a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Let's go into that.
So, I mean, we gotta go back
To the beginning.
to the beginning, and I just want to like say that telling the story in no way is having the intent to like hurt people who were involved in this, people that I still care about very deeply, but people that like definitely had like a role in this situation. And I met my ex when I was 3 years old. Our families were very intertwined with each other. Like our grandparents worked together. Our moms kind of knew each other through the grapevine in high school because it was just a very small town. But eventually me and my childhood best friend, we met when we were 3, and we were like attached at the hip from that point. Like we were so close. I was spending every weekend at her house. Her mom was like my second mom. Like she just became like my sister at that point. And her cousin, he was like one of those boys that would just kind of show up in the summertime. You know, there was a lot of that stuff. So he lived in a different town, and he would come in the summertime from the time I was 3 until forever. And it wasn't until I was about 14 years old where like interest started to really peak between the two of us. And I remember going on a camping trip with, I was with my best friend and her family, and then he had come with his family. And I just remember there being like, there was like something there. There was a spark there. There was something about him that was extremely charming, but he was very hard to get. He always kept himself at a distance. He was a bad boy. He was mysterious. It was all those things. It was really everything that I was like attracted to as a 14-year-old who had father issues and didn't like her mom very much at that point in life. So we changed phone numbers and we like just started texting each other all the time, keeping in mind that we're 14 hours living away from each other at this point. So about a year and a half goes by of us just texting and being like, oh, I like you. Do you like me? If we were only in the same town, maybe we could be together, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, he moved to a closer town. And that town was only 5 hours away from me. And we're like, maybe we can actually like make this work. I had a job. I could pay for my Greyhound bus tickets to get on the Greyhound and go visit him on the weekends. So I worked my little butt off and I got on this Greyhound bus once a month for like 2 years to go visit my boyfriend that I think everyone at my school thought I was making up for a long time. Because who has a boyfriend in a different town at 15 years old? You know what I mean? Like it sounded so like unrealistic. But that's what I did for 2 years until I got like my driver's license and he got his driver's license and we could like drive, and my mom was getting a little bit more comfortable with bringing me to him at that point. Then things started to shift once high school started. Once I started getting invited to parties. Once I started wearing makeup. Maybe wearing clothes that were like, very different than what you wear in junior high, right? You're playing around with your style. You're maybe wearing like shorter shorts and things like that. But like, it became conversations of I would send him like a photo and something I thought I looked pretty in, and he would call me a whore or a slut because my shorts were too short or my boobs were out too much or I was wearing too much makeup. So I stopped wearing makeup. I started wearing hoodies just because if he got mad at me, I would get the silent treatment or I would be called these awful, awful names. And in my head, I was like, well, I don't want to be like those girls. Like, I don't want to be a slut. Like, he's just telling me this to protect me. Like, he just doesn't want me to be, like, perceived this way. Like,
you also care about him probably a lot at this point.
It was everything.
So it's like whatever he says you're going to listen to because you don't want to make him mad because you care about him, but also like you don't want your boyfriend to be mad at you because like when you're that young, whoever you're with is like you care too much. Like it's it's the end of the world if you guys are fighting.
Oh yeah,
like
it's devastating.
So I totally get it to be changing your look because this person's being like, no, like you like don't do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and frick, like I mean, if I was fighting with like my boyfriend, I was fighting with my mom. Right. So you have that whole other element of you have your parent and you fighting all the time and you're just trying to find comfort in this one person that you love so much and so loyally. And it got to the point where then I started being really comfortable with his parents and his family. And I was 16 years old sleeping over at his house in his bed.
My mom would kill me.
My mom didn't know. My mom thought we were in separate rooms and that was the way that we were going to handle that situation. But that wasn't happening. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it just was not happening. Like, we were going way too fast, way too quickly for anyone's comfort. And I still don't know why that was allowed in retrospect. Like, I don't I don't know what adult in this mix decided that this was okay to be happening, but it was happening. And it wasn't until I had, let me backtrack a little bit. So I was 16. We were still visiting each other long distance. I had worked really hard to graduate about 6 months early from high school. And my goal with that was so that I could move to Prince George as soon as possible. Like, save up as much money as I could, get out of Fort St. John, and get to my boyfriend, basically. And that's what I did. Lo and behold, the guy dumps me right when I'm about to graduate. And I was broken. I was like, I've worked so hard to get to this point. Like, I've sacrificed all of my high school for you. And now you're just gonna leave me before you're supposed to take me to prom and meet all my friends and finally be like the boyfriend that I am expecting you to be. And he just shattered me. Absolutely shattered me. It was awful.
Yeah, especially after you worked that hard to like basically get to him.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Aw.
So I don't know why I didn't just be like, okay, like, fuck this guy. Like, he doesn't matter. Move on with your life, Cass. I couldn't let it go. I was so hung up on it, and I still moved to Prince George. I got my own place, and I was just like, I'm gonna prove to him in front of him that I can do this without him. And in the midst of all this, I'm still getting text messages of, oh, I love you. Like, maybe we can work it out when you get here. Meanwhile, he's on dates with other girls and texting other girls and, you know, telling me about those things. So he's just playing like so many mind games. And I at this point, I just feel like I'm still a 14-year-old girl, like, in love with this imaginary boyfriend that I've made up in my head. And I can't shake that vision of what I felt at that first camping trip with him. I could never shake it. Eventually, I got brave enough to go on a date with somebody else. And he did not like that at all. It wasn't 48 hours after that date where I was his girlfriend again. Because he just couldn't, like, stand the idea of me being with anybody else.
That makes me so angry because he's literally going on dates with other people. But okay, continue.
Yeah. So that happened. And the emotional abuse just it got worse, like, because I was living there, so it was easier for him, right? Like, he would like be like, I'm hanging out with so and so after school, and it would be like some girl, because he was still in school because he was held back a year. Shocker. But yeah, he'd be like, yeah, I'm hanging out with so and so after school, like we'll hang out like after dinner or something. I'm like, well, like, I don't really know how I feel about you hanging out with like some girl, but I mean, God forbid I say anything about that, because then I'm getting the silent treatment. I'm not allowed coming over. Like, I'm being called names. Like, it just, you don't confront those things. And my 17-year-old self is like my greatest enemy, because like I really look at that version of me and I'm just like, why did you let all those things happen? And I know I didn't let it happen, but it feels like I should have known better. Like, my mom didn't raise me to allow people to treat me so poorly, and I just let him do it. And I moved in with him, and it wasn't a month into living with him where he had like hit me for the first time. And that was, I was dumbfounded by that experience. I was like, what? Like, because all I told myself for the past 3 years was, well, he's not hitting me. He's not abusive. He's not hitting me. Like, he's just like, you know, telling me how it is. He's just being honest with me. He's not abusing me. What do you tell yourself after you get hit by your boyfriend? Like, how do you justify that? You know?
Yeah. Also, like, you, and I feel like I've said this before, but you like care about this person so much that like he hits you and then you want to run to him for comfort because he's been like your rock for like the
Yeah.
past couple years. So
Yeah.
like that's what's so mind fucking about the whole thing is like they almost have this it's actually terrifying because first of all you don't know that they're like emotionally abusive and you let all this stuff happen and like I've been there and I'm sure so many girls that are listening to this have been there where like you literally let them control your entire life and you don't say shit.
Yeah.
You literally cannot open your mouth. You
Nope.
can't because the you just you literally have to live silently.
Yeah.
I remember that I had this one fight with like my toxic ex and there was one point where I just sat on the couch and he was like screaming at me.
And
And
you're almost just like,
you can't say anything.
no.
At one point he was like, "Are you a robot? Like you're not saying anything." And you actually genuinely can't.
Yeah.
Like you're like I think it's like they don't even realize that they've done this to
No,
you, but
like
you're
conditioning my brain to shut down. Like when you
100%.
do these things. Like
Yeah.
you're telling me that my words don't matter and that like I need to be silent. That like they're silencing you.
100%. And it's
They don't want you to have a voice.
so scary.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying that there's these boys being raised out there that like think this is okay. And that was only the first time. Like there was multiple times where he was physical with me. His little brothers used to have these like these boxing gloves and they were like kids boxing gloves. So they had like the big paddings on them. But I remember he would just put them on and he would just be like, go down to the basement. Like we're like solving this or whatever. And his parents would be like out of the house or whatever. And he would like wail on my head. He's choked me. He slammed me into walls. He's thrown things at me. And it was always strategically done the way he did it. He never did it when his parents were home. He never did it when his little brothers were home. He never did it before like family dinners because he didn't want me to be like shaken up or crying before anything like that. It was oftentimes at night. It was never like early in the morning. It always was really late at night when like his parents would be asleep or they wouldn't see us for the rest of the evening. It always felt very, very strategic. And the one time he wasn't being very strategic about it and we got into a fight and his mom had come home from the grocery store. And I had locked myself in the bathroom and she had come in and he was trying to kick down the bathroom door. And all I hear is her saying like, what the fuck is going on down there? And was like, nothing. We're just like goofing around, Mom. And we're just goofing around. And I remember opening the door and I just saw the look of panic on her face. And all I could think of was like, holy shit, we just got caught. We just got caught. Because this is like in my head, I'm like, this is my fault. Like I've aggravated her son to the point where he is like coming at me and he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. So we are going to get in trouble about this situation. And she was out on her front porch having a cigarette. And I remember going out there and I was crying and she put her arm around me and she said, please don't leave him. I know he can change. And I was just like, okay, so if I leave, I'm leaving him and I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the boys. And that's like basically what you've just like, you've basically confirmed to me that like you need me here with your son to take this load off of you. Because if he's not coming at me, most likely he's going at you and making your life a living hell, right? Like she took the brunt of that before I came around. His brothers took the brunt of that before I came around. Now that I'm taking it, she doesn't have to deal with him anymore. So as a 17, 18-year-old girl getting told by your boyfriend's mom after she witnesses him trying to be physical with you to stay, I don't know any better than to stay at that point. Me and my mom are still fighting all the time. I still don't want to go home. I'm still not talking to my brother. I have no friends talking to me from high school. I'm completely secluded in this little circle. Me and my childhood best friend, we're hating each other at this point. We don't talk because she I don't think she knew what was happening, but she didn't like the fact that we were together because I wasn't giving her attention. And my relationship with her is a whole other thing that is tough, toxic friendship in itself, that this whole family has just very much so like manipulated to the to them all being the victims in this situation, and I'm the bad guy and I need to get over it. So when I left, it was a really bad night, and he had been physical with me, and I had texted my friend Clay, and I say that Clay saved my life every single day. I owe that man my life. I texted him and I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Everyone was right. Like, I was wrong. I'm just so like ashamed that like I have to leave, and that like I was wrong. Like, I was wrong for years. I told everybody that I was going to marry this guy and that he was my forever, and I was so loyal to that idea, and all I wanted was a family. And like, I didn't want to have a lot of boyfriends like my mom. I didn't want to be a single parent one day. I just wanted someone so badly to like love me and to marry me and to make me their wife. And Clay was just like, you have nothing to prove to anybody. You have nothing to prove to anybody. And you know how your life is going to be if you stay in this situation. And if you're okay with that, you can stay, and I will love you and I will always be here for you. But you don't have to live that life. You don't have to live in dirty Prince George with people doing drugs left, right, and center, where you're getting beat up in your basement, where you're pregnant and scared. You don't have to do those things. And when I called my mom and told her I was coming home, she was so relieved, and she just cried and cried because she thought I was going to die. It got to the point where like I lost probably 75 pounds in a year with zero. Like, it wasn't because I was like going to the gym. I was violently ill because of his abuse towards me. I was losing weight rapidly. I wasn't myself. I could barely drive my car and like stay awake. Like, I was going to die. And I remember when I left, I told them that I would be back before my birthday, because I just needed to say something to be able to get out of there safely and not have them like keep me for any reason or convince me to stay otherwise. So telling them I would be back before my birthday gave me like a little inch where they were like, okay, well, she'll be back. She'll be back. And when I didn't come back, that was a shit show. It hurt. Like, I remember he texted me and he was like, how dare you lie to me? Like, you abandoned me. You abandoned my brothers. They're asking about you. His little brothers were like 6, 7 years old, and I loved them so much. So like, using children against you like that is so wrong. And his mom was texting me being like, you didn't have to lie to us. Like, how dare you hurt us like this? And you left him and he's so broken. It was really hard. And even my friends like that I had grown up with, she was taking his side on things. It felt like she didn't believe me, because when I would tell her things, she would say like, I don't want to hear about it. That's not the cousin I know. That's not my cousin. So it was a very hard like block between like someone that I had grown up with and her family and her mom especially, that I'm just like, okay, I'm not safe with you anymore either. So this guy that I chose to be with abused me, ruined relationships, lifelong relationships I had with people, accused me of lying and hurting him, harassed me for probably 6 months after I left him. And to this day, he just gets to go live his life with his new family. Like, he's done nothing wrong, and that he's never hurt anybody, and that he is a good person when he's not. And I've been told a lot of times that I need to forgive him, that I need to move on. And it's been 10 years since all of this went down and since I left him. But I don't think that he deserves my forgiveness. And what I have done is I've forgiven myself, and I've healed that 17-year-old in me, that little girl that needs that healing and that comfort. She's okay now and she's safe. But he doesn't get that forgiveness. He's never earned it. I've earned it. He hasn't. And I don't think he'll ever get it from me.
You saying that he accused you of like lying and stuff. Do you ever feel like because he accused you so much of lying that like when you were in relationships after that or even like during the time, you felt like you were doing wrong? You felt like you were doing something wrong when you weren't?
Yeah.
Like all the
Always.
time. It's almost like an endless feeling of
Yes.
like I feel like I still get it sometimes where you're
Yeah.
like, I'm not even doing anything wrong, but now I feel like I am.
I have that feeling all the time. All the time. And it's between things that he's told me and things that his mom has told me, where it's very strange, the things that weren't okay. Like even like I'll be at the mall and I'll put on like an outfit, and sometimes I'll put on an outfit that is like maybe a little bit more risky, and I'll be like, this is a power move, like this makes me feel good, like this is a big middle finger to the smallest man who ever lived, right? And then there's other times where I will put on an outfit and I am like, oh my God, what makes you think that you can walk out in public looking like this? And that's it's his voice in the back of my head being like, you think you can wear this? Like, really? Like, come on. You can't. You look like a freaking slut right now. So I have to tell myself, like, you can't listen to those voices. And when those voices come up, usually I always do the opposite. So if I can hear his voice telling me like, you look like a whore, or you're being stupid, or you're an idiot, that is my sign that I'm actually doing the right thing, because nothing he's ever told me in my life has been true or fact. So I can't listen to him. So I just go the opposite of what that voice says.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah,
Absolutely love that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's been 10 years. Like, I don't know how long it's been since you've been out of your toxic relationship, but there's things that will follow me for the rest of my life. And that's why talking about this is so important to me, because I live with these scars and these things every single day. And like, I should be allowed to talk about those things and not be scared to, and not feel like I'm going to be called a liar, because that's why people don't say things, right? That's why I never told anybody. My stepdad was a RCMP officer. I could have called him at any point and been like, help me. But I was so scared that even my own stepdad was going to think that I was a liar, because he had told me I was a liar for 4 years. Like, I was conditioned that nobody was going to love me if I left him, that my voice didn't matter, and that like nobody would believe me if I said anything.
That's awful. And it's like, it starts at such like,
Yeah.
when was that? You're 14 or
14,
something?
15, yeah.
Like, and that's when you're trying to like find who you are and be
Yeah.
like, which is just so, did you ever hesitate to tell people like afterwards? Did you ever be like, I can't tell you because you're just going to think I'm lying or something like that?
There was a lot of different too. Like, it was hard to tell guys that I was dating. Like, that was a whole other thing, right? Telling a guy that you have been abused in any sort of fashion, I think makes them look at you in a different light. Whether they look at you a little bit of like a damsel in distress and that they need to save you, or they look at you like, oh, like, this girl's damaged, like, probably don't want to deal with that. Like, not a lot of guys ever looked at me like I was crazy or accused me of lying. But I definitely got the pity party from a lot of guys. When it came up, there wasn't a lot of a lot of it was like, oh, when was your last relationship and why did it end? Well, if you really want to know, this is why. What was really hard for me after all of this was healing my relationship with females and with my friends. because I had secluded myself. I had dropped all my friends from high school. I still don't have my friends from high school because I never really got the chance to explain to them what happened. And I feel quite guilty for just leaving people on like the back burner and not explaining myself. But nonetheless, finding those strong female relationships again that was really hard for me. And then opening up to them after dealing with trauma with my best friend from childhood and then dealing with my ex's mom, it was almost harder to open up to women than it was to open back up to men. Yeah, that was a hard one because girls are judgmental too.
Totally.
Right. Yeah, so that took a little bit, but the biggest thing was when I told my husband, my now husband, like everything of what happened, because he knows from front to back every nitty-gritty detail of that relationship. And it was nice to share that load with somebody finally, and like be able to tell someone and feel safe telling someone. But then you deal with the other half of things where now you tell people that you love the trauma that's happened to you and they're angry for you.
That's so true.
Right?
Because if they really care about you, they're going to be like, who the fuck did this?
Yeah, right? And I'm sure you, even talking to your friends, like finally confessing to them, like what happens in your relationship, they're probably like, what the fuck? If I see this guy again, like he better, like it is that feeling like, not only are my best friends like very protective over me, but like my husband's friends are very protective over me because they know of my past. And like I have friends that go work up north in BC and very well could run into this guy. He doesn't want to run into the people I know.
You're like, you don't want this to happen.
You don't want this. Like I was scared for a long time of him, and I didn't go home for years because I was so scared to run into him, and I didn't want his mind games to play with me anymore and to have an impact in my life. And I just don't feel like it's fair to feel scared to go to your hometown anymore, you know?
Yeah. It's not.
So we're trying to get over that one.
Yeah. It's so crazy because it's like it depends on the person in your life. It depends on who you're telling. It depends on who's asking, like who you're going to open up to. Sometimes you do get the sense where like, you're just going to not believe me. Or you do get the sense where people are just going to be like really angry about it. And you're like, no, it was 10 years ago. Like, let's just chill.
And
like,
the anger is also like scary too. Like I don't I don't need you to now be violent and angry for an experience that was violent and angry for me. Like that instantly makes me feel uncomfortable.
Because it takes you so long to get over what you've just gone through. And then it's like, okay, now that I'm over it, I don't need to bring up the emotions or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like we don't need to bring
or it'll just bring up more drama.
Yes. And it doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be a lesson. At the end of the day, like what's done is done, and all you can hope for is that the people in this situation have moved on to be better people. Has that happened? From what I heard, I don't think so, but I'm not there and I don't know them anymore, so what can you do?
So you're the only person I've ever told this to. I had this message. This like makes my heart race even just like talking about it. I had this message. This girl messaged me and she's like, so do you know a guy named, and she said my ex's name, and she's like, is he abusive? And I to this day have not opened this message because I'm like, do you feel any sort of how would you say that, like blame or anything? Like, do you ever blame yourself for like the people that they're with afterwards just because of like, what if something happens to them,
So I've actually thought about this a lot because I have like a little bit of like a push and pull feeling with this. I think in one sense, I have like this feeling of like we need to protect each other as women. And like, when men are dirtbags, the world needs to know that they're dirtbags. there's a reason there's those like Facebook pages. What is it? Are we dating the same guy? Like that kind of stuff. They're wild. But like there's a reason why like us as females have had to like start doing those things for each other. That being said, when you are in an abusive situation and your safety is somewhat at risk, in my sense, I was not in like the same city or province as my ex, so I was not at like a direct like physical risk in this situation. But when he got a new girlfriend and I saw that he got a new girlfriend on social media, my heart dropped because I was like, if this girl goes through like an ounce of what I went through, like she's done for. Like there ain't no way that like not to be like, oh, I'm so tough that like I could handle this, but I know how bad he can get, and I've known him for so long, like since I was a baby, that I felt like I knew ways to navigate him by that point, and someone completely new coming in and trying to get to know him, it was really scary for me. And I had almost sent her a message, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, what is the risk that I'm putting myself in this situation? And I knew that if I were to message this girl, his mom would message me and rip me apart violently. Like she would rip me a new butthole very quickly. He would do the same. He would go on like a rampage. Like he would go on like a texting warfare. He would, like, I even think my best friend at that point would be like, you need to stay out of this. And I think her mom would have said the same thing. On top of that, I didn't know if she would believe me. I wouldn't believe me if I got that message. Like if someone had messaged me and said, hey, your now boyfriend was abusive to me and did A, B, C, D, I would have been like, you're crazy. My boyfriend? No, he ain't doing that. I wouldn't have believed her. So there's a part of me that was like, the risk is not worth it for me, because I'm in such a fragile state right now that if these people come at me, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle it. And at this point, I mean, he's, from what I know, I think they're still together. So it's been 10 years. And that is now, that's now her world to navigate.
I actually like that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that it is our responsibility as like victims of abusive relationships to plaster all over the world what we've been through, who these people are that hurt us. Because it's very traumatic. It's very traumatic. And like, you know, these people tend to jump on really quickly because narcissists like people to control, right? So like they started dating probably like 6 months after I left, right when he stopped like texting me all the time about like my Instagram photos and stuff like that. That's when I knew he was with someone, because now his attention was someone else. He was controlling someone else at that point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was very, very fast. I didn't feel safe messaging her at that point. At this point, it kind of feels like I'm trying to ruin your life situation if I were to ever message her. You know what
you're
I
like,
mean?
I'm done with that now.
Yeah, like that one, I'm like, that's kind of your problem at this point. And I hope that he is a better person and treats her well for her sake. Like I want nothing more than like happy and healthy lives for people. I hope that he never hurts anybody the way he hurt me, and I hope his mom never hurts anybody the way she hurt me. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like no, you're good. I love that answer, actually. So, advice. I always give some kind of advice at the end of the podcast. Do you have any advice for any girls that are maybe like feeling like they're in a toxic relationship, or like wanting to get out of one, or maybe they just got out of one?
Yeah, I'll tackle all those.
Love that.
The first one is, and I learned this from my current best friend. Her name is Bridget. She's my heart and soul. She's the reason I feel like everything in the world is going to be okay. She's healed me in more ways than anyone has. Your best friends are your soulmates. I truly believe that. But she's always told me that if you keep secrets from the people that you love, you know you're doing something wrong. So I think when you're hiding your partner or the things that he does to you from the people that you love, you know you're not supposed to be with that person. If you can't bring someone to meet your parents, to hang out with your friends because you're scared they're going to make a fool of themselves, they're going to be rude to you, or they're not going to be liked, there's a reason you have that feeling, right? So if you're hiding things from the people you love, you know you're not doing something right. Another thing that is very important, and I wish I would have done a lot more of, is listening to your mom. Your mom knows more than you think. And as teenagers, we can be very nasty to our moms. And we have to remember that it's our mom's first time living their lives too. They don't have like a playbook on how to make everything perfect in this world or what to teach you. They're really just trying to like help you and be there and guide you as best as you can. And I wish I would have treated my mom better in those moments and listened to her, because all the advice she'd ever given me has always turned out to be true. For people that are in a abusive or toxic relationship that they don't want to be in anymore, I think the best thing that you can do is try and make a plan. It's really hard to just leave on a whim because, again, you put yourself into a little bit of a risky situation at that point, depending on what kind of situation you're in. But I think, like, for me, like, I had let my mom and a really good friend know that I was leaving and when I was leaving. At that point, I don't think we could, like, share locations on iPhones. So it was kind of like, if you don't hear from me, you know, like, where to find me kind of situation. So I really just, I had a plan. I was like, I'm going to pack my stuff while he's at work, while his mom is at the grocery store. I'll load things up. No one will see me do it. And then when she gets back, I will say goodbye and I will leave before he gets home from work. So that was kind of my plan there. So I think it's really important for people to have like a safe exit plan when they leave. We have a lot of resources, and I think we are very scared that people aren't going to believe us. But I think that asking for help from professionals like police officers, like social workers, is so important, and it can be so scary, but they're there for a reason. And ultimately, the reason why I never called was because I was so scared I was going to get him in trouble. In retrospect, it might have helped him more to become a better person if he would have known what the consequences of his actions were. So I think that I do think it's important to use the services that are available to us, because there's people become police officers and stuff like that because they want to help, right? And I know that looking back, I think that if I would have reached out for help, I would have gotten it if I would have sought out the right people. It can be really scary, but the other end is always so much better. And leaving a toxic relationship and coming out the other side, it's so important to just work on healing yourself and not jumping into relationships right away, because then you fall the risk of like falling into the same like red flag circle. Because let's be honest, like when you have been in a toxic relationship for that long and that's all you know, you're going to just gravitate back to that because it's so familiar to you. And it's just a whirlwind spiral. So I think I was single for like 2 years before I met my husband. And I was like, I can't deal with men and their shit. I have my shit I have to deal with. So just taking that time for you is so important after being in such a traumatic situation. And whether that be like therapy or finding yourself through like fitness and yoga, which is kind of like the route that I went at that point. I just really engulfed myself in like health and what I needed to do to get myself back to like a really good state after being in an abusive relationship. But yeah, just taking that time for you, because you didn't have that for so long. Like, you were silenced, you were like hidden, you were told what to do. So like, do the stuff you want to do. Like, eat the food you want to eat, wear the clothes you want to wear the makeup you want to wear. I remember I went the week I moved to Calgary, I went and got a tattoo because I was like, I can do whatever I want now. And I just enjoyed every single bit of freedom I got. And 10 years later, I wake up every single day so grateful for the freedom that I have because I left that relationship.
Wow. Yeah, and you're also thinking like, okay, I just got yelled at for so much of like what I was wearing, what I was doing. Like you're saying, like the makeup thing, all these things that it almost takes a minute for you to like feel yourself again. Like,
Yeah.
I can do this and nobody's going to get mad.
Yeah.
Or, and you're right. Like, there's always like that, even the 6 months of him like messaging you and still trying to control you. You're like, we're not even together and you're still trying to control me.
Yeah.
Like, and it takes that time for you to spend every waking minute on yourself rather than someone else, just to feel like you can do you again.
Yeah.
Which
absolutely.
is just so.
And you don't even know what doing you is.
You've no fucking idea.
Like, how do you do you when you've been like in this like fuck show for the past 4 years?
You're like almost so scared to do anything because you're like, who's gonna yell at me? Like, what's gonna happen? And it's like they're almost so controlling. It's like you go out in public. Like, I remember sometimes I would go out in public and I would almost feel like he would show up to the places that I was at. Like, I was that paranoid because that's the kind of person that he was. He would show up when you're like, why the fuck are you here?
Yeah, like
what
we're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like for months after, I was just like almost scared to like go places because you're like, he's going to show up somewhere. He's going to, he's gonna find
be
out
there.
where I am.
And he's gonna 100%. Fuck up my life even more than he already has. There's a reason that I don't go home. Like I just can't.
I avoid it all.
I avoid it at all cost. And like, yeah, I'm like, you can stay over there. We're so good with you being over there. In your own little world, and I'll stay here. Yeah. And again, being in like the weird intertwined family situation that we unfortunately are in, with like our grandparents knowing each other and our parents knowing each other. It's just like, it was just a little bit messier than I would have, than I think that a lot of people experience in their relationships with that small town for you. And that's just the way it happened.
The way it goes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for just everything that you've said. I feel like so much of it is stuff that girls can take and just like either realize that they're in a toxic relationship or take it away and just like, come up with their plan or whatever they have to do to leave, because that's so important. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Don't let boys make you cry. Never. They're not worth it.
They're never worth it.
They're never worth it. Thank you so much for having me.
Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next episode. I love that.
So funny.
So good.